Life really does have a funny way of working sometimes. Not only do I have a Unity fast FTC mount, but I have both styles of their mounts. The OMNI mount, which is set up for 2-bolt bottom end mounting, as seen here on the EOTech G45, and their 30mm tube version, which is seen here with a Burris AR tripler. Not only do I have both their styles, but both of their color options, black and FDE. These were sent in by two completely different people at the exact same time. Fantastic. Fan-fucking-tastic. We're going to start with, well, I'm just going to pick it because it's on my right and I'm right-handed. There you go. The FDE version. Both of these feature QD lever mounts at the bottom, which are very reminiscent. Let me pull it out. That's the newer style. There it is. The older style ADMs. You can see everything is exactly the same, including the US patent number, which is on the top side over here. I know from having multiples of these that this system is really strong, durable, and it resets very, very well. We only have a single cam lock because, again, this is only for a magnifier. And the way you adjust the tension is very simple. You disengage the lock. Got a little lock right here. Push it in, and you have this little hex nut. Obviously, clockwise to make it tighter, counterclockwise to loosen it up. And you can then put this on your pick rail as easy as that. And remove it just as easy as that as well. Really good claw, really good lock, just a functional setup. And I'm sure they went with that because it's very common. Just to show that they are both the same on the bottom end, identical in every single way, shape, and form down here. The only difference comes in the top part, where you will see that there are some significant differences, but they both function exactly the same. Also, if you're wondering what the center line is for your magnifier on these, it's 2.26 inches. So keep that in mind. If you want to buy one of these, you're going to have to buy, potentially, something like this, either from Unity. I think a couple other manufacturers do make that center line height, because if you don't buy it, you're not going to be able to look through your magnifier and your red dot or your holographic sight very easily. So something like this is an absolute must. And you might be asking, well, if I got to buy that and that, then how much do these cost? These cost around $260 direct from Unity. Shipping and tax may or may not apply, depending on where you live. But for around that price, you're buying a pretty interesting looking mount. We're going to touch on the concept behind it in just a moment, but let's continue just looking on how well these things are machined and how well they're put together. The claws on top are very clearly slightly different, again, because this has to accommodate a clamp for a 30mm tube, and this is just a flat plate. Both of them function exactly the same as doing this. Got a really strong, solid detent to bring it down or to lower it, and to raise it, it pops right back into place. And when it pops into place, it really does pop into place. There is no wiggle to this thing at all. It is extremely, extremely tight. Checking out the 30mm tube one, it functions exactly the same. Clicks right there in the down position and pops and locks right in the top position. You can see that's where your detent is. There's a big ball bearing. I don't know if you could see it, but I could see it. That rides inside that hole and locks in there extremely tight. Again, just like we saw with the OMNI mount version, there is no play in this whatsoever. Do I believe play is going to develop? Anything is truly possible, but it looks like we've got two ball bearings, front and rear, and that's going to not only help lock it, but also keep tension on it so this way it doesn't move too much. Some people are concerned about magnifiers when you take them on and put them off or tilt them away, or in this case lower or raise them, that they do shift their zeros. I have not noticed that with these two. I've been running these for a couple weeks now, and they just function extremely, extremely well. Now, I did mention that you do have to run a certain height mount for your red dot or your holographic sight, and that does hold true. And some people might question, why run 2.26 inches? It's all a matter of personal preference, and or if you're possibly running night vision and you want to run passively through this. Now, you're not going to be able to use a magnifier in front of your night vision, in front of your red dot or your holographic sight. It's going to be a little bit challenging to get behind that, but you can either stow this in the down position or take it off the gun completely. And now you have a really high mount for your optic to be able to get behind it and look through it with either a helmet and night vision on, or maybe you just want a more upright head position. The reason why you want a more upright head position as opposed to canting your head over onto the buttstock is you have better situational awareness, and it can be more comfortable, especially if you're in the standing position more often than the time. It could also be a little bit faster for some people to get on target. Or maybe you're a bigger guy and you got a bigger jawline or bigger cheeks. Going with a higher mount might be a little bit more comfortable for you as well. So there's a lot of reasons to go with a higher setup mount. And these have become more and more popular as of late because more and more people are realizing, I don't want to crane my head over onto my stock and then not be able to look out my right-hand side or my left hand, depending if you're righty or lefty. You want to be able to stand squared up against your target, pull the gun up, and not have to move your head too much. So higher mounts definitely have their pros and cons. Here is how they look like when they're mounted up. We have the G45 in front of a Trijicon Tri-Power. I know, going with different brands is total madness and proof positive that I'm probably a little psychotic, but this is not my setup, it's someone else's. As far as how this mount sort of looks when you get behind it, you can see it does not protrude off the side all that much. It does, however, protrude off the side a little bit more than if you had something like a standard flip to the side mount, as you could see on this Holosun HM3X. And yes, you can get different spacers for this to rise it up, but you cannot get something, or rather, I shouldn't say you can't get something, but you'd have to look for something that will allow a magnifier like this to come up all that high. And then there's going to be another problem, which we're going to touch on soon. But as you can see, the Unity mount does come over to the side a little bit more. Now, when you stow it, you just push down, and you can see it doesn't protrude off to the side, and we could still just look through the red dot or whatever optic we have in front of this. Now, the OMNI mount does seem to take up a little bit more space as opposed to a 30mm tube version, but we're going to touch on that in just a moment. But as you can see, we could still use it, even though it's not as ideal as I would like. But there's still, again, pros and cons. The con is it does obscure a little bit of your view, and it does keep this basically right under your eye, because most eye reliefs on magnifiers are like 2.5 inches anyway. But to deploy it, push up, and you're good to go. And then, again, back down. With the AR tripler now behind it in the exact same mount, but again, for the 30mm tube, you can see we have perfect lineup of both optics. But with this case, when we push it down, you can see you have a lot more view looking through it. That's because just the way it can be shaped, because you're only clamping onto a 30mm tube, not a 2-bolt pattern like you see here with the G45. G45 is also a significantly larger body, but it doesn't matter. This mount was designed to clear probably the largest magnifiers possible, which, guess what? The G45 is rather hefty. But with a 30mm tube magnifier in there, you can see we have a beautiful view looking over it, and we don't have any obstructions. Again, flip it up, and you are good to go. So you might be asking yourself, why am I even bothering looking at a mount? My magnifier already came with one, whether it be the HM3X, most EOTechs, in fact, almost all the EOTechs, in fact, almost every magnifier on the market comes with a mount built in or included. And you're absolutely right. But it's not when this thing is in operation. You see, yes, the Unity mount does stick out much farther to the right as opposed to the HM3X when they're in operation. But when you stow them, that is when things change. The Unity mount simply drops down out of the way, but with a tilt-away, you can see just how much farther off it sits. And this is now a high point. If your gun is strapped in front of you, strapped in the back, stuff can get grabbed on. This can grab stuff. This can hit into things. It can get broken. It's way farther off the gun. As you could see, you're at least 2 inches farther off. And this, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, only has a very small spacer on the HM3X. So yes, we could remove that spacer, but then you're bringing down the overall effectiveness of your height to look through it, and that might not make for an ideal setup. I really don't know if there's anything else for me to say. The mounts are really nicely made. They're finished extremely well. They're fairly lightweight. They're under 5 ounces. They come with really good QD mounts on the bottom. Again, they're basically just ADM QD levers, which I've never had a problem with, ever. And if you do lose a spring, let's say, or a spring breaks, you can easily replace them. ADM does sell replacements, or maybe even Unity will even give you one. Who knows? But the mounts are really, really nice. And I do like the fact that these, when stowed, stay contained basically on the gun, as opposed to, again, any sort of tilt-away mount where it now becomes an obstruction. You hit this into things, it's a snag point, it becomes a high point. And nobody wants that on anything, really, unless you're trying to build an anchor when you want to grab stuff, in which case, yeah, use this. This will be ideal. Now, these do offer, I feel, more pros than they do cons. The price is the price. $260 isn't terrible, especially if you're buying something, let's say, like this really cheap Primary Arms Gen 4 LER 3X. You could throw right in there. This is like $140. I can't remember the price. You buy this, you have a $400 setup. Yeah, that might be a lot for a Chinese magnifier and a really nice mount, but that magnifier still works really well, and you could always upgrade this in the future. So if by happenstance you are looking for a Unity mount like this, expect to pay more than $260 if you do not already have a mount that will give you the proper height that you need. But I think if you are going to be looking at this, you already have that in mind. With that, a huge thank you to the two gentlemen that sent these in, because to have these both in at the same time and run them and try them out has been wonderful. I really like this. It's a very smart design. It would be cool if they were to come up, or if another company would come up with perhaps a slightly lower one in case you wanted to run like 1.93, because going from 1.93, which has almost become the new standard, going up an extra just shy of 3/8 of an inch is a lot. But again, it does have its pros and cons. So you really have to weigh that out with yourself and find out what's going to work best for you. For me, now that I have night vision, I could absolutely see myself getting behind one of these, quite literally. In case there's any confusion, let me be clear. What I mean when I say I can get behind this with night vision, it's I can get by the extra height of the mount for the red dot or the holographic sight, not with the magnifier in place. The magnifier, when stowed down, takes up all the space for where your nods would go. So you would have to remove the magnifier if you're going to run your carbine with passive aiming through whatever optic system you have through your night vision. So don't get it twisted. You're going to have to remove it no matter what. However, the extra height coming off the top of the receiver would be nice to allow you more room for your nods over your top rail. And for the price, I would have no hesitation picking one of these up. So with that, thank you all very much for watching. And as always, see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you can still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.